Ladies and gentlemen, it's crunch time. I'm Jefferson Penrod. The clock is running, so let's go to work. We had a loaded weekend in the sports world. Let's get right into it. And I want to start with this in probably the most shocking, but at the same time expected move in the history of college football. James Franklin has been fired as the Penn State head football coach. This move comes on the heels of Penn State's 22-21 loss at home versus Northwestern. That was announced on Sunday afternoon. I want to look a little bit at the timeline. So coming into the season, Penn State was ranked number 2 in the AP poll preseason. 3 straight wins to open the season, all at home versus Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. And then the big game against Oregon, who came into that game ranked number 6. It was the whiteout, all this noise, all the bright lights. They lost that game 30-24 in double overtime. Penn State did lead at the beginning of that first overtime, but was unable to get things done. The ensuing week went to Pasadena to play UCLA. Lost that game 42-37. That was UCLA's first win of the year, and actually their first time leading all season. And they took the lead at the beginning of that game and never looked back. And then, of course, this week, they lost against Northwestern. Quarterback Drew Aller suffered a season-ending injury in the fourth quarter of that game as well. And Sunday afternoon was announced by the university that James Franklin has been fired as the head coach. Reported roughly about a $50 million buyout, would be the second largest buyout in college football history, just behind Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, this is crazy. I said this was shocking yet expected, and I want to talk a little bit about that. James Franklin built this program up from mediocrity. Before James Franklin got to Penn State, they were never really anything special, and he built them up. He had a 104-45 record at Penn State. Remember, guys, last year against Notre Dame in the national semifinal, they were basically one play away from going to the national title game. And even just 15 days ago, they were 1 or 2 plays away from beating Oregon at home, a top 10 team, in double overtime. I would have thought that he would have earned some, the right to have a down year after all that he's put into Penn State. But at the same time, you look at these things, this year was supposed to be the year for Penn State. They had a lot of returning production from last year. It's very, very clear that he lost not only the locker room, but he also lost the fan base. If you saw videos of what happened after the game, and basically throughout the whole game, there were chants of fire Franklin, just getting booed off the field basically once the game was over against Northwestern, even after the Oregon game. And so it's clear that he lost the fan base as well, and probably the confidence of the administration. And if you're going to make this move after the season, you may as well do it now, I guess, is the argument. So that way you have a head start on your coaching search, and you can figure everything out with the rest of the staff and recruiting and all that. What's next for James Franklin? I mean, he's been in football continually since the 90s. Maybe he'll go to TV for a year or two and then try to come back into coaching, a la Dan Mullen, or maybe he'll go straight back into coaching. We know that there will be a lot of movement, There will be a lot of movement this offseason in the college football coaching world. So if he wanted to take a job just after the season, I'm sure he'd be able to. The other question I want to ask is, how good of a job is Penn State really? Everyone's saying, this is going to be the best job of the offseason. I think that probably is true. But how much of their success had to do with James Franklin? I mean, remember, they were a mediocre program until James Franklin came in, and he built them up to a national title contending team. They obviously never got there, but they made playoffs and were up in that conversation. They won 13 games last year, guys. And just after that, after losing 2 games to teams that you were favored by 20-plus over, it's all over. The short list of people to follow up James Franklin as the head coach of Penn State. There are a couple names. I've seen a couple like Matt Campbell, the head coach at Iowa State, or Matt Rule, the head coach at Nebraska. They're probably at the top of the short list, but there are a lot of options. The other thing Penn State has is they have a lot of time to figure that out. We'll see how that progresses, but big news. And I think this sets a lot of precedent for what may happen the rest of this offseason. Remember, There's going to be a lot of movement in the college football coaching carousel, and I think that this is just the beginning of some dominoes that are about to fall. Let's go to this. It's Holy War Week, and there will be lots of BYU Utah talk this week coming from the Game 7 podcast and on here, but it's my show. I don't know. I'm a BYU fan. I'm going to talk about BYU. They escaped out of Tucson in a double overtime win, 33-27. BYU did not look good the entire game after the rain delay. Basically, the second, third, and fourth quarters just looked sloppy, did not play at the level that we know that BYU can play at. They started the game up 14-0, then gave up 24 unanswered points to be trailing 24-14 in the fourth quarter, and then ended up coming back and tying it and forcing overtime with 19 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Let's just say it how it is. Bear Bachmeier looked like a freshman for the first time all year. 12 of 29, 172 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, but he also did very well rushing the ball. 22 carries for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, and a lot of those weren't even scrambles. A lot of those were designed runs. If you can get that many yards on just quarterback power when seemingly everyone knows it's coming, that's bodes very well for your offensive line and for Bear, but again, just looked like a freshman, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. We've seen him look very sharp earlier in the season, so it's expected that he'll have a couple bumps, but he's going to want to work on things and tighten things up in the future, and at least he needs to if BYU wants to get to where they want to be. LJ Martin was nearly unstoppable on the ground, 25 carries for 162 yards, 1 touchdown, average 6.5 yards per carry on the day. And I thought BYU got away from running the ball with LJ Martin a little bit, but they probably could have stayed with that longer and had more success. But LJ Martin played very well. The BYU defense played decently well, but honestly, they just need to get healthy. Jack Kelly was very much missed, but Siale Acera at the linebacker spot played very, very well in his replacement. Keanu Tanavasa was also missed after leaving due to a targeting penalty in the first half. Raider Demooney also left due to injury. Tanner Wall got banged up. So BYU needs to get healthy, especially coming into this game against Utah on the defensive side of the ball. If BYU plays like they did against Arizona, against Utah, they don't honestly have a shot of beating Utah. Utah looked very good against Arizona State. We'll get to that in a minute. But these need to be some of the best schemes that Aaron Roderick and Jay Hill come up with all year and maybe in their careers if BYU wants to have a shot. And BYU needs to take advantage of the national spotlight. You know, Big Noon Kickoff is coming, primetime slot on Fox. And listen, despite being 6-0 and number 15 in the country, nobody believes in you, BYU. I mean, heck, I don't even know if I believe in you right now to be able to win that game against Utah after the performance that you just put up. And I would love to be able to say that I'm confident in BYU. I just don't think I can say it right now. By the way, Utah opens as a 3.5-point favorite on the road over BYU. We'll take a quick timeout and be back in just a second. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to check out the Game 7 podcast, where I, along with my co-host Jackson Jones, look at the biggest stories and make predictions for the biggest games each week. Welcome back to Crunch Time. It's time for our 2-minute drill. The clock will start in 3, 2, and 1. I mentioned that we talk a little bit about Utah. They got it done over Arizona State, 42-10 in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Utah controlled the game from start to finish, and they did it by running the ball on the ground. Devin Dampier only had to throw the ball 12 times, was 7 of 12 for 104 yards. The team averaged 6.6 yards per carry. Devin Dampier with 10 carries for 120 yards, so that's 12 a carry for Dampier with 3 touchdowns. Yes, Arizona State was missing Sam Leavitt, but honestly, I don't think it would have mattered. Utah looks very, very sharp, and BYU, like I talked about, needs to be concerned about how good Utah looks and game plan the heck out of that game. Now, yes, Saturday was for college football, but Friday, everyone was locked in to the Game 5 of the ALDS between the Detroit Tigers and the Seattle Mariners. 15 innings of pure cinema. This was so fun to watch. I've always talked about how, regular season baseball is kind of fun, but can be boring at times. But playoff baseball is so intense. It is just one of the best things you can watch on television. By the way, that 15-inning game was the longest elimination game in MLB playoff history. The Mariners walked it off to win 3-2 in the bottom of the 15th. Just about everyone on both teams pitched. You had a lot of arms going around. And the Blue Jays, I'm sure, were excited that everyone would be tired, but it didn't seem to work as the Mariners on Sunday night beat the Blue Jays 3-1 in Toronto in Game 1 of the ALCS. And Adam Amin, by the way, killed it on the call of that game. And lastly, just real quick, Ace Bailey looks very, very good for the Utah Jazz. Yes, it's just preseason, but he's averaging 22.5 points per game in 35 minutes on 14.5 shots, and he's shooting very well. It gives me some hope for the Jazz. I hope that they don't let me down. They probably will and only win about 3 games, but that is what it is. And that concludes our 2-minute drill for the day. It was closer than it's been previously, but we got a lot in. That is going to do it for this episode of Crunch Time. Make sure to follow along on Instagram at Crunch Time with Jeffy. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and follow if you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. We got a lot of big things coming on this show and on the Game 7 podcast this week, so stay tuned. Until then, we'll see you Wednesday.